From One of One Production Studio, located in Fort Lee, New Jersey, this is The Art of Music Tech. And now, here's your host, Fela and Dennis.
Let's go, and welcome to the Art of Music Tech podcast. And today, we have the legendary Patrice Rushen. Hey.
Welcome, Patrice.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming. I'm Fela. There's Dennis.
Hey, guys.
We're the normal people here, but we have a legend. Had to go first with you. Patrice is the chairman of the University of Southern California Pop Music. Chairman of Pop Music at the University of Southern California in LA. That's big. And having many hits that we've all heard and been rehashed with Men in Black, with Forget Me Nots. And
I have a great story about that, but I'll tell later.
Okay.
Also,
just all the amazing stuff. Thank you so much for coming on the show and showing love.
Thank you.
Yes.
My pleasure to be here.
We just had a great conversation for an hour.
I know. We should have.
We didn't hit record, yeah.
We're going though.
Okay,
You're still
that's it.
here.
That's right.
And we're still going to give you some good knowledge. So let's go.
From the legend. Let's go.
The legend.
Let's go.
So, Miss Rushen, where are you from? Where did it all start? The musical journey.
I'm from Los Angeles, and I know that sounds funny to some people. Say, well, people are actually born there? Yes. I'm from LA, and the environment there really allowed me to see a lot of different sides of what it means to be involved in music as a vocation. Going all the way back, there's 6 years between my younger sister and I. So my parents both worked, and I was in a nursery school program when I was a little kid. And the teacher there was musical. And during the day, when we would do activities, painting and doing things that you do in nursery school, when we would get to any kind of singing, dancing, musical activity, that's when I would really, I guess, show up, as far as being animated, engaged, and involved. And she told my parents that she felt like there was kind of an unusual kind of aptitude. And my parents said, okay, nice. What do we do? And there happened to be a program that happened at the University of Southern California that was a graduate course for music education majors called Eurythmics. It was designed for little kids so that they could observe and notate what kinds of things these kids had in common, who seemed to just enter the planet with a certain kind of musical appreciation and aptitude. And we danced around the music and waved scarves and talked about music in terms of color, talked about music and sounds in terms of how it made your body feel. All of these kinds of concepts that are for little kids very common and interesting, but for adults are very intriguing in terms of that connection. And to this day, I still rely on a lot of that information in terms of how music makes you feel. And the kinds of things that you do in terms of the emotional content that is within the notes and the choices that you make, to the music that I do. So anyway, I went through that. I went through public school where we had music education as just part of a general education. So there were bands and orchestras and choirs that were just part of what you had to do.
Oh.
And I was in like all of the bands. I learned to play the flute in junior high school, middle school.
So that was your first instrument?
My first instrument was actually it was piano. It was piano. But I didn't have a sense of what I wanted to do with the piano. I knew that I had heard so much music that I wasn't that interested in pursuing a classical career, although I really, and to this day, appreciate classical music so much. But I didn't see myself doing that. Some of that might have been because I didn't see that many people who looked like me doing that.
Yeah.
But the idea was that in learning that music and learning that appreciation for that music, it gave me good technique, it gave me good fundamentals, it gave me a sense of the tradition and the trajectory of what was possible for music. But my parents listened to a lot of jazz.
Yeah.
Did they play instruments?
No, not at all. They were like your consummate music lovers that, maybe occasionally would sing in the church choir or something like that.
Okay.
But who had like a mad appreciation for jazz in particular.
So you were growing up listening to jazz.
I'm growing up, and in our house, used to be where you'd have a stack of records on a spindle and the records would fall down. So they'd be listening to jazz. They'd be listening to the pop music of their day, which included like Frank Sinatra and Perry Como and people like this. And I heard all of this music and just kind of soaked it in as a part of the ambience of just what was going on. The radio was always on. Television, we had TV, so that was always going. And I heard music of all different styles, a lot of different ways, and I could actually picture the idea of music as a way of life, as a vocation, very early. I couldn't see myself doing anything else.
Oh. And how old were you when that?
That was like when I was around a teenage.
You're like, okay.
Then I went to an all-black high school. It was a new school. It was post Watts riots of the late 60s. The goal for the whole community was to rebuild not just buildings and places, but a consciousness about.
I gotta ask you this: did you go to Watt Stacks? Did you get to go to that concert?
To the Watt Stacks concert?
No,
I didn't get to go.
Oh,
I wish I had. I didn't get to go.
Yeah, check that out. That's a beautiful
it's
DVD.
awesome.
Wow.
But I lived in Watts.
Yeah.
Or what was at least boundary wise, what was still considered Watts, and the idea of the community. The idea of having people kind of surround this consciousness of excellence and getting really good at something was a part of the way that I grew up. And I went to a high school where we had a very, very strong, it was public school, but it was a very strong music program. And there were 3 teachers there that were very innovative. Donald Dustin, Frank Harris, Reggie Andrews. Y'all can Google them. And the idea was to use music as a platform to teach us a lot of different things about life.
Yeah.
That concept has become a little bit more institutionalized and has been a part of higher education for a short time. But that was very innovative at that time, for sure. And out of that program came a lot of people who are professionals today and have become my friends. Gerald Albright among them. Guys that play Earth, Wind, Fire played my high school prom. They used to rehearse at that high school.
That's big.
Right. So those guys, they didn't go there, but they used to come there because they needed a place to rehearse. And my teachers opened up, they knew them and opened up that up, and we watched them.
They played the prom.
Herbie Hancock came to the school, and his band, when they were a sextet, Mwandishi, they came to watch us and see us, and they got that we were serious. Lenny White, yes,
yeah, he's a local around.
Wow.
of course, and that's when I met Lenny when I was like 15 years old, because they got that we were really serious about the music in total. They got that we were, through these teachers, being shown the experience that allowed for us to be able to absorb a certain amount of the tradition and see our place in being able to carry that further. And so many of us continued, on to be, successful professional musicians.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to write. My thing was to write. I love to play. But what I really wanted to do, I wanted to write for film and TV. I wanted to be inside that little box.
Okay.
Doing stuff.
So did you start writing when you were a teenager?
I did. I
Okay.
used to write like the arrangements for the marching band, and we used to do stuff off the radio because we didn't want to play the stock band arrangements.
Yeah.
So then my pseudo gig became, well, what songs do we want to play? And to write for the band. And my teachers allowed me to do that. And that experiential learning is a big part of what I do today.
Tuba,
all of it.
The whole thing.
And we get out on the field, and our team was sad, but the band was killing. I'm sorry.
That's what a lot of black, either HBC, historically
Exactly.
black colleges, or it's all about the band.
One of our teachers had gone to Southern University, so that tradition
out of Georgia,
of what he taught us,
yeah,
was part of what it is that we learned. Because again, that's part of that's a key element to the African American music experience.
Yeah,
and so we learned a lot in that way. We were nicknamed the Little Gremlin.
Little
of LA.
Little gremlin.
Wow. Nice. So you get out of high school.
Yeah.
And did you have plans to go to school, or you just wanted to pursue music, or how did that go?
I wanted both. I wanted to pursue music. Also, my parents definitely had worked towards that mindset where I was going to go to college.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I knew innately that I needed to stay in L.A. because, like I said, I thought I wanted to compose for film and TV. I thought I wanted to be that kind of composer. So I stayed in L.A. because I could see that was where that happened. That was a path, with all the studios there, with television largely based there, films largely based there.
And this was before that move to Atlanta.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Canada
Way
and all.
before
This was
all
like
that.
everything
It was
was
centralized.
so centralized. L.A.,
Exactly.
Hollywood. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I stayed in L.A. and I went to school at USC.
Oh,
I went to the universities, and but they didn't have a path directly to that. This was before you had, curriculum that would concentrate on being able to formulate those things that would lead you to that path of film writing or whatever. This was before there was jazz in the schools. This was certainly before there was popular music as a major.
Yeah.
So I was a classical piano minor, and I had a music education major because my parents thought it was a safe bet if I took classes that would allow for me to be able to get a job. And they felt that teaching, of course, was a noble profession, as it is, and that it would lead to that path. But I had no intention whatsoever of doing either of those things.
So wait, your parents wanted you to be a lawyer or doctor?
No,
or
musical educator.
They didn't mind
right?
if I was in music.
Oh, they
wanted
were
me to
open,
be
right?
happy, and they knew that that's where my talent and my passion and my spirit was.
Drive, okay.
And they were good with that. But they also wanted to be, can you support yourself?
Yeah,
They
of course.
they couldn't
Their
make the
parents.
connection between a composer and eating.
Yeah.
They could make the
A lot of
connection
people
between
can.
teaching and keeping your lights on.
Yeah,
They could make that connection a lot. They were,
the baby girl and at least a roof over her head and lights on.
Exactly. And my parents were pretty, I have to say, they were very progressive because a lot of parents, particularly then, would have said, you can't do this music thing and make no kind of life for yourself. They would only see one particular path and not at least be able to see, well, there are music teachers and there are, music people who do play in clubs and there are music people who do studio work. And my parents could at least make that connection that there were other things. It was not all about you having to be, on the front line all the time.
Interesting.
That was unusual.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're out there, you're at USC. How was college life? How was that? I mean, you're still kind of close home.
Life. I hated college.
You had
I had such a tremendous high school experience that created so many lifelong friends because we were learning together. And experiencing together. And this is something I think that we take for granted when we look at education. A big part of your education is the community that you're in terms of your peers. There's the teacher-student relationship, but there's also the peer-to-peer. And that peer-to-peer relationship is a part of what keeps you going if all of your peers are striving for a certain kind of excellence. And we wanted to be so bad we could play anything. Because we saw everything. We saw the masters in the clubs. We saw the Herbie Hancocks, the Cannonball Adderleys, the Freddie Hubbards, the Pharoah Sanders, the Miles Davises, you know, the Coltranes, the Lee Morgans. We saw those people. Yeah. We also saw the nameless, faceless studio musicians at the upper echelon who were doing television and film because they were so skilled that they could address any particular style and be able to navigate through that to be able to accommodate the composers for film and TV. Uh-huh. We saw extraordinary music teaching, extraordinary consciousness about the connection between the power of the student-teacher relationship. We saw the choir director. We saw all of these different kinds of lifestyles that were connected, and what they had in common was this love of the music. And that was our goal, was to be able to participate in any way possible in all of these things and to get a skill set that would allow us to be just ready for whatever would come up. We loved the music and the idea of music making that much. Uh-huh. And we protected each other and would hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was high school.
Oh, it was high school. One of my best friends was the late drummer Ndugu Chancellor, who played on Reach For It and played with Santana and played with Miles and Frank Sinatra and is the drummer on Billie Jean. So all over the gamut, you know, the whole thing. That was my best friend.
You would think he was only a jazz drummer, right?
Not at all. Not at all. But that was, and we would hold each other accountable for having our skills together to be able to handle it all authentically and coming with purpose.
Yeah. So getting to college, it was like every man for themselves.
College was a completely different situation. At that time, you know, you could count. I could count the number of African American students that I would run into
on the campus. Period. Yeah.
But the idea was to be able to focus on the information that you needed to close whatever information you didn't get or any gaps. But as an enjoyable community experience, it was not that.
Not that. Yeah.
And one of the things as a teacher now, and particularly as chair of the popular music program at USC, that is part of what I have hopefully been a part of reinfusing into that consciousness, is that they are a community of artists who need each other. And they can't be afraid to fail in front of one another so that they can lift each other, because that's what's going to happen out in the real world.
That's what you learn.
Exactly.
And that's what you teach your
exactly.
Students. That makes sense. Makes total sense.
Yeah. So going further, it was the Monterey Jazz Festival of 1972 that sort of launched an awareness of what it was that I was doing. We used to enter a lot of, as a high school, a lot of high school bell bands and jazz contests and things like that, because you'd win instruments and we needed them.
Okay.
Of course.
And then we entered that one that year that Monterey used to have. The band didn't win, but I entered the combo division with a sextet, and we did win. And the prize was that you got to appear on the main stage.
Ooh.
And that's really where things jumped off after that time.
And you killed it, of course.
1972. It was amazing. I had a great time. It was nerve-wracking.
Monterey,
and
1960. So who else was on that?
Oh my gosh, it seemed like it was everybody I had ever heard of was on the show. And the Monterey Jazz Festival was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I know what came from that was that a lot of record companies were there, and I was asked to consider signing to a lot of labels, and I was like, I'm not ready for this at all. I know that sounds really strange because most people would be running towards that as fast as possible. But I knew I wanted to go to college, and because this was my last year of high school, and I knew I wanted to go to college. And although I didn't know exactly how I was going to get there, I had sort of a game plan, overall game plan in mind. But a small label that was up at Northern California called Fantasy Records said, listen, we get it, and we can't offer you a whole lot of money or anything like that, but we want to give you an opportunity to be able to record. And we do it like a 2 or 3 album deal. And the money is not a lot, but we give you creative control. So just, it was so low key and so friendly that I needed money for school. So I took the deal. And I had a couple of other offers, but this one just seemed to be the right fit for me.
Yeah.
And I did 3 albums for Fantasy, and things just kind of spiraled. That.
Who else was on Fantasy Records?
Oh, Cannonball Adderley.
Yes. I know I've heard it. I couldn't.
Stanley Turrentine.
Okay.
Sonny Rollins.
Sonny Rollins
was on that label. I mean, there was some
Heavy
hitters on the label. Joe Henderson, who I asked to play on my first album. It just gave me an opportunity to kind of step into that side of it, continue to write, and to get some of that more together, and of course to play, and to be challenged at a high level. And what I loved about being on that label was that it was like a low pressure kind of a thing. I learned a lot, and they used to put me on other people's records where I would be playing for some of the other people on their label. Mm-hmm. That was kind of a practice back then.
That was a lead into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And after those records came out, they had the same effect as I could liken it to what we have today when people post. Your records became sort of a calling card that allowed other people to hear you.
Uh-huh.
And because they would be on the radio, and people would hear it and go, oh. And so I would start getting calls from other musicians. I heard your record. I was listening to radio. I heard this, or somebody was talking about you. And that used to be how things were generated. Uh-huh. And then gradually I started getting more and more artists of note, Jean-Luc Ponty being one of them, to call me to play on his album, John McLaughlin, Vishnu to play on something, Harvey Mason, Lee Ritenour, lots of different people who would tell somebody, who would tell somebody, who would tell somebody, who would tell somebody.
And I mean, this is all in the jazz world. Like, when do you even get to the pop part of that? Like wow.
Well, that kind of it's so weird.
Wow, that's super deep jazz,
right?
Yeah,
great foundation.
I think the pop stuff entered my life a little bit later as a result of having sung like one tune on one of those Fantasy Prestige albums. One. Now, as far as my own personal development was concerned, there wasn't this huge separation, because at the same time that I'm listening to the jazz greats, I'm growing up at a time when I was a little kid where Motown was in its prime, where Sly Stone and James Brown were just a part of my environment in terms of the people that I would listen to. That's what we were hearing at school. Marvin Gaye, blah, blah, blah.
That's pop.
The Beatles. Oh, come on. When the Beatles hit and Rolling Stones and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I was a very impressionable, preteen at the time that those things happened. So those were part of my musicality, part of my musical DNA. Anyway. So anyway, going back, I sang this one tune on this last Fantasy Prestige album. And at the time, Electro Asylum, that was part of the Warner's group, was entering into an era where they wanted to incorporate a more wide commercial palette. And they had already been sort of this Laurel Canyon super successful label. They had the Eagles. They had Linda Ronstadt. They had Motley Crue. They had Jackson Browne. They had this and that. And they were looking as a label to expand into a marketplace that allowed for what seemed to be a trend out there as the audiences were getting older and more sophisticated, to be able to sort of bridge this gap between a certain kind of jazz and high art aesthetic with a certain commercial sensibility. So I was signed at the same time to that label as Grover Washington Jr., as Lee Ritenour, as Lenny White when he was doing the Peanut Butter thing, as Donald Byrd and the Blackbirds. We were signed around the same time, and I guess they saw me as being able to perhaps be part of this bridge to a certain kind of tradition, but that had a certain kind of commercial sensibilities. And they asked me to sing more.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. But they gave me the budgets to also be able to have strings and horns, which I would write
to produce,
for.
Okay.
To co-produce the records, which I did. So it wasn't just about satisfying what they wanted to do commercially. It was also a palette for me to be able to get some of these other skills worked out. Exactly. And I took total advantage of that. And I learned a great deal and was able to have the kind of freedom to be able to try things and do things that represented my take on that balance between an aesthetic that was informed by tradition, but also could take into consideration that the idea was to get people up and feeling the music and moving to the music or reacting to the music in a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was an amazing time.
Yeah, I mean, and getting to combine everything that you like between the pop world and the jazz world.
Exactly.
And so when does the hit what's the first thing that kind of like, oh, wow, this is a lot bigger? When did it get to that? Like you're like, oh wow, this is I've really hit something.
I think the first single that actually came out on Elektra was a song called Hang It Up. And that really opened up the idea of R&B radio, black radio, to me from that side of it. And then later there was Haven't You Heard, which was sampled by Kirk Franklin in years past that.
So with those songs you wrote, these are all songs that you've been writing. You wrote those, right?
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Ladies did and lyrics too, right?
And the arrangements and everything. So it was like a perfect situation, along with my friends, some of whom were co-writers on these songs.
Yeah.
And we were all developing at this time. Freddie Washington and playing bass, and again I mentioned Ndugu and Paul Jackson Jr. I mean, Paul is probably one of the most recorded guitar players of all time.
Yeah.
But it started then when we were all together and we were just doing the music that we wanted to do. And it was unusual and crazy. We didn't have any interference whatsoever. We just did what we did. And I don't know if that's because they really cared or didn't care at all, but I don't care.
It worked
out. And those songs really kind of also introduced us to a different side of the music business, whereas you can have a hit song or a song that people really resonate with, but you had to move up a certain kind of food chain to be able to get videos, to be able to go out on tour, to be able to get the kind of respect from the label from the standpoint of things that would allow for you to be able to do certain activities. And by the time we got to the third song that seemed to take off and then hit a wall, we realized, you know what? It's going to be up to us to generate that excitement. We can't wait for the label to catch up. Again, I felt like this was new territory for that particular label. And I think that they were behind in the kind of automatic marketing that they would attribute to some of their other acts. They didn't attribute to us.
Yeah.
So when Forget Me Nots came out, we said, we ain't going to lose another one. We're going after this one ourselves. Once we got a clue that it had the legs that we thought it had in terms of its connectability and its commercial ability. Right out the gate, we put our money together to do independent promotion for the first time. The idea of being an entrepreneur, the idea of going out on a limb, investing in the thing that you believe in, and knowing that there was a market that was ready to receive, but you got to get in front of that market.
Yep.
That idea for us was formulated then. And we didn't have a lot to work with, but we said we need to make sure that it gets to people for them to decide. But you got to get it in front of them.
Yeah.
And we did that, and that record took off. And we never looked back. And we didn't lose that one because heretofore, people were really into the music that we heard, that we were doing and that I was doing, but it would get lost in translation where marketing and riding that momentum came into play.
So what was that difference? What specifically did you guys do with that money that you pulled together?
Yeah, we bought 3 weeks of independent promotion, which meant that we had somebody who would walk the record into the radio station, get an appointment with the program director, because radio was that powerful then. Get an appointment with the program director and say, you need to listen to this. Just listen to it. Mm-hmm. And if you like it, put it on. But you had to have somebody who wasn't coming in with a stack of 25 things. You know,
From all the label stuff. Like,
this
hey,
was somebody
how about
that's
this
walking
one?
in
How
with
about
yours.
this one? Yeah.
Personal.
And pointing the person in that direction
Yeah.
of paying attention. You can't make people love the music if they don't.
Yeah.
But you got to get it in front of them for them
But
to
you
have the
knew it
choice.
had legs. You
Yes.
knew by this sound
We
like,
do our
okay,
homework.
this
We
is
did our
doing
homework.
something. Okay, let's do something else. They have their behind the times way of getting it out there, but then you
Exactly.
just got a guy who was like, okay,
Yeah.
ready and willing. Hey, we wheeling and dealing.
Exactly.
I know that particular DJ. Yeah, let's go.
Exactly.
Okay.
The lesson there for
Nice.
me was learning to understand and appreciate that if you've put in a certain amount of time and you've done your research and you've done what you're supposed to do, that sometimes you might be ahead of the curve. You can't wait for everybody to catch up. You need to get it in front of people for it to already be sitting there so that they arrive at that point with wow.
Yeah.
You know? And it was a valuable lesson that really taught me the meaning of what it is to believe in yourself and to follow your instincts about the possibilities for what can happen, to not hear the noise and just kind of go towards what it is that you feel needs to get done. And I think that now, particularly in the way the entertainment is now, man, that's a credo, man. That's the way of life. But you gotta really know that what you have is solid.
Solid. Yeah.
Yes.
You gotta know that this is gonna kill it anyway. So I don't mind who sees.
Won't happen
this.
overnight though. Like
It won't
we-
happen overnight.
Like we had
Yeah.
that conversation earlier.
You take your time because you believe and you know that the possibilities are there, and you have the skills to back up what it is that you can do, so that it's not a one-time situation. That you, if you're given the opportunity, that you can create on that level and put together on that level over and over and over, a certain consistency, because it's about the purpose. Yeah,
And you said body of work too.
There it is.
Consistency.
exactly.
Okay.
Oh, so you guys get the big hit. You
Yeah.
put your own money behind it.
it
Everybody's
worked out.
feeling good.
Yeah, everybody felt so great. The record company gave me my money back.
Exactly.
They gave me our little investment back.
Okay. Oh.
Handsome. I mean, my goodness. So you have that monster hit. Where do you go from there? It's just like you get to just continue in your passion. Keep building. Does this? Is it like the Super Bowl? How the team disperses after the big win? Everybody goes off and does their own thing, or what happens next?
Well, the technology began to change. Things began to change. The album that followed that one allowed us to kind of experiment with some new instruments that had come out. The DX7 had just come out.
Oh.
And I had a little studio at home now where I could record a little bit
all
at
right.
home. So now I'm experimenting with different ways in which to offer that same higher purpose presentation. And we had another song called Feel So Real. And it got on the charts really fast, and it was perched right between Michael Jackson and Jermaine Jackson's "Tell Me I'm Not Dreaming" and Prince's "When Doves Cry."
Wow.
And I'm looking at the record company like, what you gonna do? And
Michael and Prince. Wow,
I said, man,
that's rarefied
right?
air. Let's go.
And I waited for the record company. Now we've already shown you, so I'm wanting to do a video. I'm wanting to tour.
Yes.
Time for you
It
to
didn't
get-
happen. It didn't happen
It
after.
didn't go down that way.
Oh wow!
It didn't happen that way.
So you're still waiting for tours and music.
So I didn't
videos
get to
and
do as much as I think I could have happened given that positioning, and that too was a lesson, because I knew that the next go round for me needed to represent more of what it was that I saw in terms of the completeness of my musicality. I didn't want to chase chart numbers. That seemed to be very limiting and superficial.
Yeah.
So the idea in that lesson was to kind of regroup, knowing that I had achieved a certain thing. I'd probably have gone as far in that area, and it was time for another frontier.
Uh-huh.
So I was courted by Arista Records, which was Clive Davis.
Uh-huh.
And I did one album for Arista, and did my usual thing in terms of us coming together and writing some music that we thought was really cool. But it was a different situation, and now I have all of these people looking over my shoulder all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It's
telling
not,
you what to do.
It's not like
we
it's
should.
Maybe we should.
like, well, you need to raise the tambourine right here. You need to da da da. And suddenly, it's not the expression. The palette is different, and it's not the expression of completely what I would want to do, but it has to do with an agenda that goes along with being able to support.
Wow.
And that was a great lesson for me to learn
Yeah.
that things do come with a price tag, all of it.
That's
All
so
of it.
funny. I just watched the Clive Davis documentary on Netflix like last night. So that was so funny. Like he's insanely hands-on. And you're like, so for you, that's like,
Yeah, it was
Like,
complete opposite.
hold on. Like,
It was the complete opposite of my
what you were
experience.
used to. Yeah.
And because I had received from the people, from
Yeah.
my people, the highest compliment already, which was that they were accepting of the music as it was. It was like a complete change to
Yes.
have somebody say, well, no.
And
We're
I mean,
gonna-
that was his thing. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
in the documentary, it says,
Exactly.
I'm
And I
going to
think-
tell you, turn down the vocals, turn up the guitar. I'm going to tell you this, that, and the other.
And it worked for a lot of people.
For some people, but
But
for
I think what I also saw was
Yeah.
for as many as it didn't work, many as it worked for it, it didn't work for more
a
people.
lot.
You knew behind the scenes.
And I think that I knew early on in that relationship, having that album just sit there while they were waiting on the hit to emerge.
Yeah. Again, they
I
talked
said,
about that in
well,
the documentary. It had to be at least 2 hits per album was his
And it's
quota.
like, how do you, if everybody knew how to do that, in other words, I think our philosophical considerations and approaches were
Yeah.
not the same.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say one was better than the other
yeah.
because it obviously worked for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
But for me, it was
Yeah.
not a good fit. It was not a good match. And so I asked to be released
Yeah.
from the label. And I think that the compliment that he paid me was that while I think he really appreciated my skills and my talent, I think he knew that was never going to result in
What he
wanted to see.
what
His
he-
vision for me
yeah.
and my vision for me were not
Two
the same.
different, yeah.
So they did let me out after a while. And I continued then to get back to the composing side and the film side and the orchestration side and the things that I wanted to do. So I ended up doing a lot of TV during that time.
Okay, so like
okay.
what?
And that's what
TV did you-
it's funny how things work. A guy named Robert Townsend, a director named Robert Townsend was
Little
going
guy.
to do he was going to do a film called Hollywood Shuffle, and he needed a composer.
Oh,
And he was going around to the different composer agencies, looking for a composer. And I had recently been signed to one of the agencies that he visited, and I think my name was on the bottom of the list in pencil. And he's going down the list, and he's seeing these amazing composers to him that are not meaning anything, and he gets to the list and says, wait a minute, I recognize this name right here. And it's because he knew the records. He was a fan.
Yeah, heck yeah.
And he says, well, I want her. Well, now this was to the horror, I'm sure, of the agents who were like, well, this will be her first picture and blah, blah, blah. He says, well, yeah, that's who I want. So I ended up co-composing the music for Hollywood Shuffle.
Wow. Okay. Now we got to go deeper into what Hollywood Shuffle is. That was like the precursor to Living Color.
That's right.
I'm gonna get you, sucker. Like,
right.
This is the beginning.
That's a whole
of black comedy. Like, we're talking about the hot young.
That was a community within themselves.
Holy cat! The Wayne,
Keenan Ivory, Wayans. Now watch this.
All of that.
Watch this. So when the first time I played New York at one of the clubs, it was 7th Avenue South, I believe, or the Bottom Line. I can't remember which one. Keenan Ivory Wayans opened for me.
Doing stand up. That's crazy.
Okay. And in LA, it was Arsenio Hall. So see, you see what I'm saying about the arts community?
Yeah, in that back in the day,
70s,
there was
80s,
a lot of comedians
90s.
that opened for rock groups.
There you go. Exactly.
That was like a thing.
Learning
that
something every day.
now.
That was a thing.
But back in the day, yeah.
We helped each other.
Wow.
And the idea was when Robert did that film, that's the famous film where he didn't have any money. So he bought old film stock to shoot on, and he paid everybody with a credit card.
Yeah. He was even before Kevin, the guy who did Clerks. But that whole thing, But he was the first to do
it happened
that.
before
Max
Clerks?
Out.
I haven't seen. Sorry, I haven't seen that movie.
Hollywood Shuffle is.
It's like a cult film.
It's
now.
a cult film.
And in this movie, he
David
wanted
Allen
to
Greer,
be exactly David Allen Greer.
So
you
many
just name
people,
them; they're in it.
Their first.
The idea of this movie was that as a black actor, he was always typecast as pimps and slaves.
Pimps and slaves.
Wow. And he had these dreams of playing Rambo and Superman and all of these things. So musically, for me, it was ideal because in one moment I'm writing music that sounds like James Brown and Superfly, and in another moment I'm writing music that sounds like John Williams' Star Wars.
Yes.
And so and creating and recreating the musical atmosphere of the music in Rambo and stuff like that to represent Rambro.
Wow.
I have to clap.
So this one film for me became like
That's such a classic.
The sampling of all the kinds of styles
that
I could do.
Wow.
And from that, Robert got 5 HBO specials, and he asked me to music direct all 5. That's what started my music direction career in television.
Indeed.
That's what started it.
Wow. Shout out to
And these
Robert
were 5
Townsend.
variety shows that featured comedy, musical guests, film clips.
Yes.
All the things that were within my wheelhouse that I would have never otherwise had the opportunity to do all in one setting. So I have a great deal of I offer my kudos to Robert for his work, but also for his confidence in me, and because it allowed for me to be, and that's Fela. That's what I'm telling you and Dennis. It takes one correct door or moment that allows for you to be able to walk through that door and take advantage of that moment. That if you're then prepared, skill-wise and creatively, and not lazy about doing all the work, not cherry picking.
Even free work,
doing
like you said.
doing free work. That it opens it opens
does.
up to you. It takes one opportunity, and then if you walk through, and
But
a
you
lot
must
of
be
different things
prepared,
happen.
right? You already
But you have
already
to
had
be
body of
prepared.
work before
That's what,
you started.
somebody told me that a long time ago. They said there's a certain amount of this that is serendipitous, a certain amount of this that is luck. But luck is being prepared for the opportunity.
Yeah.
You know?
Hours every day.
Yep.
There it is.
Exactly.
And the willingness sometimes to do it for free or to do it for a lot less because the opportunity
Oh yeah,
gives you might open up
You see a bigger picture, right?
relationships and bigger things that you could not
even
possibly
imagine.
get, yeah.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the story of our business.
There it
It's
is.
just,
And it
hey, we
had a
like
great
this
story.
person. Let's just do this for them. Let's just,
Yeah.
and
I
it'll
mean, we
be
did it for
something-
Christian, like
Exactly.
in Japan and China.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things that you can't necessarily put a value on it because they become game changers.
But it's priceless.
Life changers.
Priceless.
It's that
5
free
years
work
later,
ended
5 years
up-
later.
ends up being priceless.
So from music directing those 5 specials, the director of the NAACP Image Awards came to me, and I did 13 years in a row of that variety show.
Wow.
And the same director who had done the Robert Townsend stuff then called me years later to do the Emmys, which I did 3 times. Then that director called me to do some stuff for BET. I did several BET Walk of Fame shows. One was Stevie Wonder, one for
Yeah, I've
Smokey
seen
Robinson, one for
those.
Aretha Franklin.
Dude.
Wow.
And then after
Listen
that,
to the names.
After that, I was asked to do the Grammy Awards for 3 years. So,
M-ding
right.
for the best of that year.
On the charts with
On the
Michael Jackson and
charts.
Prince.
She took care of all of that. Like, all your music, all these different genres, being able to handle that from country to classical to pop. That's, whew, wow.
So the journey has been amazing, and the idea of it being this just gumbo of so many opportunities,
Yes,
but
gumbo,
but I
exact.
remember
Soulful gumbo. Wow.
but what I remember most is that what we wanted to be, what my crew wanted to be,
Yes.
was able to do any and all of it, and we worked to that end, and a lot of that has come to pass.
Has come to pass. Wow. So when do you get back into education then? When does the USC thing come into play?
I was asked, after doing all these award shows and stuff like that, my reputation as a music director for these big events, was out there. And USC used to do these big fundraisers, and it would typically involve an orchestra and all of the different areas of the music departments coming together, opera, jazz, and they wanted a music director to kind of help organize how to present this
work.
idea, and so I was called just independently to do it, and as an alum, I felt, okay, this might be kind of cool.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to be back there, in the capacity of a professional when I had been a student who was not happy there because I couldn't get
Yeah.
the stuff I needed to know. I couldn't get it there at that time.
At that time, yeah.
But I did my job and everything went really, really well. And I was asked to come back a second year and do it again. During that second year, a guy named Chris Sampson, who had been working at USC as an instructor, and he also had spent some time in the area of administration, that dealt with, scholarship and scholastics and stuff. He said, "Can I show you something?" I said, "Yeah." And he whipped out of his pocket a blueprint on a little piece of paper of what he saw as being a need and a sketch of a curriculum for this popular music program, which would become a major. I looked at this thing and I saw everything there that I wish I'd had when I was there.
Like,
And I said, "Well, why are you showing it to me?" And he says, "Because I'm going to need consultants, and I know that our movement towards this thing depends on professionals being able to say, here's the information you really need in order to put it into an organized curriculum that can be followed and kids walk out here. Because everybody ain't going to check the box of wanting to be a classical player or singer, and everybody's not going to check the box of wanting to be a jazz player or singer. And yet, that information is valid to them and needs to be corralled in such a way that it's applicable to what they want to do as their major. And it's possible that there could be a curriculum that doesn't just pander to the idea of a commercial kind of music major, but that sets them up in ways that we were set up. Saves them maybe a few years because we had to do it as we did it. But organizes that information in such a way that they can walk into the marketplace, walk out with a degree, and be ready for the workplace at a certain level as a professional, ready to go. I said, sign me up. And I became artist in residence for that. That program is now 10 years old. And the structure of the music school has changed slightly. And Chris went on to be ultimately vice dean over a division which had popular music, jazz, music industry and technology, studio guitar as a separate thing, and film scoring. Because in the real world, our worlds revolve around that. The producers need to know the performers. The performers need to know something about production, the industry and technology piece. Everybody needs to know something about the technology in order to do their piece better. In other words, it was this building on the idea of what it really looks like in the real world and our interconnection and interdependency on one another. And if your college program begins to foster that consciousness there, that becomes the network that you go out of school with, and it just gets wider. Exactly. So that program has developed into being Thornton, which is the music school of the University of Southern California. It's like really the flagship program now, because those kids are getting out of there, and within a year to 2 years of graduation, they're winding up with huge gigs, some winning Grammys, some working with the likes of Katy Perry, George Benson.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
Gwen Stefani.
Thanks to you.
Doing these things because this idea is being cultivated in real time.
Yeah, honing something that you knew from back when you were in school
exactly. And the kind of skills and the kind of versatility that is required now becomes part of what their work is when they're in school, and when they're out in the world, they are able to offer in service of
what is going on,
all these different things if they want.
Yes,
exactly.
Exactly. That's the worst thing when you get out of school. You don't really.
You're like, well,
okay, thanks for the diploma, but
now what? Right?
If you hadn't been primed before, you just like, okay, what's the next?
And it still takes the time.
Yeah.
It still takes the direction. It still takes the cultivating of how you're going to go about trying to do it. And it still takes that aha moment of you realizing what it is that you really, really want. But you're skilled enough to be able to then turn that aha moment into an actionable step. And to let them know that in a college environment, so that they can experiment with all the different things they think they want to do, to at least hone in on how they learn, how they have to be thoughtful and mindful, and then have the courage because they have the skills. It's a different thing, and it's really rewarding for me and really creative because it keeps changing as the industry continues to change. So we can't get lazy and say, well, 30 years ago.
Exactly.
No,
you're literally in popular music, so that means your curriculum has to move constantly with the move of popular music.
Without doubt.
Wow, how is that? Can you move that fast in education? Because it just gets bogged down.
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge.
I will admit to you that we move at a different pace and a different rhythm than the rest of the music program, the rest of the music school. Which is typical because institutions move slowly.
Yes.
we also move in such a way that I think that the proof in what happens means that, although we have to push hard and we constantly have to try to, reorganize and convince the powers that be, that they are starting to get it. They're starting to get, if this kind of innovation, if this kind of new model is something that you really want, then you do have to be willing to adjust 100 years of doing it this way to maybe looking at the possibility of doing it a different way, not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, but definitely adapting to a speed and a desire, and also a different kind of teaching that involves experiential movement, and that does move faster than a lot of institutions.
So you have to bring in like the latest producer. Like, how do you keep
experts
with that? Because it's like every
you keep
5 years. I mean,
you find yourself
it's so
having
quick.
You're exactly right. You find yourself with there being a core kind of knowledge that you have to keep finding ways to make that core relevant to the way in which people would be utilizing it out there in the world. And and the students are really smart and really adaptable when they get that you're telling them the truth.
Okay.
And when you are not afraid to be able to take them off the little pedestal that they're on because they have created some beats or they have written one little song or something like that. Say, that's lovely. But here's what you need to know. If you want a career that lasts 50 years and not 50 minutes,
exactly.
There's information that you cannot not do. And so we build, just like you would in any other field, you learn the history. You learn foundational material and you carry it through. You give people a chance to then experiment with that vocabulary. Some days it's going to be better than others. You lift them when they fall. You close the gaps of what they don't know. You give them more information. You let them take the information that they knew and apply it to now this new information that they have about how they build on what they want to do. You offer certain information that you know they need about technology. Certain information that you know they need about entrepreneurship. You offer that to add to the mix of the music and the knowledge that they have had. You allow them to see it through a lens that keeps focusing on how it's a continuum, not a competition. It's a continuum.
I mean, jazz was pop music.
Jazz was pop music.
Sure was.
Exactly. Which is why when we used to get a little bit of heat from the jazz community as we experimented with these other kinds of forms, especially me, we used to get a little heat from the jazz community. It was like, well, you have to be sold out. What are you talking about? This is part of the tradition too. This is the involvement of the tradition because we knew that. We didn't leave it. Now, that's different from somebody who enters it over here, has no idea what's happening over here, and just kind of just plops down where they're at. Okay, that I can get that you would not maybe relate to. But don't be jamming me up.
I know, right?
Right.
I mean, and jazz is how we came together through Brother Mr. Christian McBride. Because Patrice is the keyboardist in The Situation. Christian McBride's The Situation. Is Patrice Rushen, Christian McBride, DJ Logic, Allison Williams, and
Ron Blake
and Jahi Sundance.
And recently we've invited DJ Lindsay. Yeah, she's doing a great job.
Yeah. So, Patrice is in town, thank goodness, in New York for with the Blue Note run of The Situation. The Situation, I mean, it culminates all with what we've been talking about anyway.
I think so.
Jazz. Pop,
being open to
everything,
anything.
Right. I was out on tour with them for it was like 3 weeks. We were in Europe, so we became good friends. Me and Patrice, a lot of talks about music, and the way that band came together. I guess I'll let you tell the story of how that came together. And we got a bunch of DJs, bassists, keyboardists, singers, and a saxophonist in one band. Two DJs, mind you, too.
That's right.
This is a crazy setup. I'll let
It's a
you kind of
crazy
tell
setup.
the
Well, again, you know,
Monterey Jazz
Monterey
Fest.
Jazz
Goodness
Festival.
gracious,
That's
this is a lucky place.
Comes
wow.
back
It comes
around.
all the way back around. Oh, it's amazing. It started there,
Yeah.
where Christian says that, he was supposed to be headlining a show one night, and his two of his band members were stranded. They couldn't get there.
Yeah, airport stuff. Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I'm headlining the show, and I don't have a band. So he looked at the lineup and said, well, who's not playing when we was going to play? Yeah. And Ron Blake was already with him. I happened to be in the area. He said, will you play? I said, okay. I said, what we going to play? He says, I don't know.
Wow.
I guess he found Logic, and we went out there and just kind of jumped off the cliff and saw what happened. Well, again, this is where your skill and musicality and openness and all of the things we've been talking about come together in one moment. The vocabulary that all of us share allowed for us to find a common ground in real time and be able to make some music. And that feeling that was certainly what we felt on stage, but also we could see it in the audience making a certain kind of connection. Christian picked up on it, and he says, we got to do this again. And so he invited other people to be involved, and I think we did a few other dates. I think the one that we met at was at SF Jazz in San
we have a
Francisco.
recording of that.
Yeah.
And again, it was like kind of walk out there and just sort of see what happens.
Yep.
And we did a couple of them at Yoshi's in the Bay Area. And every time we did it, what was just obvious was that there was this connection that had to do with the music's communication. It wasn't so much about what song is it going to be or what this or that. It was about a certain kind of communication that was just raw and real because the articulation of it was so clear. Yeah. Sometimes you'll see people and it'll sound good, but it's not it's not clear.
Yeah.
Or it'll be crystal clear, but there's no showmanship.
Yeah.
Or the music will be at a very high level and really high done, but there's no connection. Or it'll connect, but it's not done well.
Yeah.
This seemed to have a platform that would allow for all of those things to gradually come together in a way that would have all of the best parts of the meal.
Exactly. I mean, whether you're young, with me looking at the audience from where I'm at, young, old, everybody was digging it.
Everybody was digging
It was such a... I mean, to see people dance at a jazz show, you don't see that.
No, you don't see it. And especially you don't
it's
see
just
it when
getting up and feeling it.
When they're satisfied that from a musical perspective, it is being presented at a level that respects that tradition. So it's not a feeling of playing down to anything. It's a feeling of challenge that is just lifting, but it allows the audience to be able to come with you, which is really an interesting thing. And I really experienced that, when we were in Europe this summer, just seeing that over and over and over and over again. So it's been really interesting also to note that a lot of times people make the leap that DJs don't have, that they're good at what they do, but that they don't have a certain kind of informational consciousness and knowledge that so many of them are spinning. And there are people that are just spinning records and that's what they do. But then there are other turntablists as artists whose vocabulary and whose study is just as intense as the study of what we do as musicians on our instruments. They are musicians.
That's their
and
instrument,
artists.
right?
Yeah,
That's their instruments. They are musicians who are creating in that way.
Yeah.
And when that body of knowledge meets this other body of knowledge and they converge, you have an experience that is way different from somebody just providing beats or just providing background to, it's a little bit different. And that has been an interesting phenomenon for me, to be able to see how that connection is there. Then you add to it the last member of the band, the sonics. Because our presentation means nothing if can't nobody hear it. And it's not presented in such a way where all of these elements are presented also from a sonic quality that allows for it to happen. Enter in the engineer, enter in the front of house. Because no more can we consider that that's not part of the presentation. No more can we ever consider that that's not part of the deliverable in how people perceive a performance. So all of these elements, all these skill sets, all this information comes together for a presentation that allows for people to feel something. And the process of that has been just tremendous. It's been really, really interesting to watch and observe and see all these pieces come together, and what it means to an audience when it does. It's a different kind of thing. I'm still shocked and surprised at the reaction.
Yeah.
You know.
Hey.
Yeah, Paris, London. Oh my goodness, it was, the reception was amazing to the band, and it's just so different. It's I can't even explain it when I'm just like, you just got to see the show. So there's definitely going to be more touring with that, with the situation, and doing, more with this. But
like we've talked about, you're doing even more.
Situation. Oh yeah, we're looking to do more.
Definitely.
So I just want to thank you.
Oh, it's
Patrice,
been a pleasure.
Because wow, you just.
I gotta share the story before
your story.
closing. Well, I'm originally from Kazakhstan, right? I was born in USSR. So before I came to this country, 2007, I think, I didn't speak English, right?
Wow.
And when I first time saw Men in Black, I heard that music, and I didn't know nothing, language-wise, and I couldn't know how to translate it. In all line, I remember, here comes the Men in Black, right? That was the cat.
That's right.
That was the line. Until I came to this country and I met Fela, she educated me. That's actually, this original song comes from you. I didn't know that until I came to this country.
Wow.
And then we had that conversation a couple of days ago. It was like, that is so crazy, because she told me you're coming to the studio for the interview. In that moment in my head,
your One American song, you kind of knew.
Wow, awesome.
Wow,
that's crazy.
Yes.
Wow,
music.
Wow,
it travels everywhere.
Everywhere, and it touches people.
Not even knowing the language.
Not even knowing. Wow, nice.
Not even knowing the language.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's why we do what we do.
That's why we do.
You get a
For
pinky
those
finger
moments.
in that. Come on.
I get to meet you after whatever 20 years. 22 years since that movie came out.
Yeah,
22.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah,
And,
that's a big moment for me. Achievement. I would say.
Wow. That's,
Yes.
woo. Wow.
Thank you.
Thank
Wow.
you. See, it's moments like that you can't predict that. It just is. And like we were saying earlier, sometimes you don't know. And I have a feeling that artists, and when I say artists, I'm meaning the entire collection of creatives. I think that the price, so to speak, that we pay for being creative, for having these talents, is that we're not gonna always know how it's gonna plan out. Sometimes if you are in a certain field, you do this, you do that, and it equals this. Creatives, we need to learn to become more comfortable with the idea that we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know where it's gonna go.
Yeah.
But we must do what we do because it is our truth. It is who we are. It is what we do. It is why we are here. And just know that if we stay on purpose, stay in our truth, get our skills together so that we have options of the way we keep touching with our truth, then it's all going to work out. It will work itself out because we are ready to receive that opportunity.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. The opportunity, that's always, people see what you're doing. Whatever you do, whether it's good or bad. So you might as well just get to it and get to work on something you're passionate about.
That you're passionate about. That's right.
And people see what you're doing. You never know. But
yeah, I mean, social media. Did you know that Christian found Fail on LinkedIn?
Well, yeah.
When she told me that, I said, "Well, how did he find you?" And she says, "Well, he found me on social media."
Yes.
I was like, "Wow."
Yes. And
somebody's watching.
People like you, the Kim Verses, the Leslie Ann Joneses, who you're a big fan of as well. Like all of these amazing people, I get to meet and I get to show the world what you guys do, like how you inspire us.
Yeah.
These behind the scenes, these are usually conversations I get to have with people. Just behind closed doors, but this platform puts it out there and gives everybody that
knowledge
that
from the masters.
You didn't have a Grammy Award winning dad that that you started out doing this with. Like, no, you got this from your community. You found other people that were on the same playing field as you that wanted to make it happen and making it happen. I mean, that was how me and him,
Exactly.
we were like, oh, you want to do something? Yeah, let's do something. Let's make. So, this is what this is all for. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
The Art of Music Tech podcast is on Apple Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, all the good stuff. And how can people get in touch with you, or how and how did your album, this the retrospective,
the compilation. There's a new compilation that came out from all of the music, a lot of the stuff we've been talking about today. That's from like 1974 through the early 80s. That has all of the hits on it. Some beautiful photos. It's in vinyl and also the digital format.
Yeah.
So that's available on Strut Records, which you can find. Of course, all of those albums that came out during that time are available, and you can find them on iTunes, Amazon, any place.
Yeah.
I've played on probably, 1,000 records. Yeah. So just Google my name, and you'll see a lot of different people that I've played with, and certainly you're open to find those records to get a better sense of course, sort of the overall artistry and the kinds of things that I like to do. But you can also get in touch at www.patricerushen.com, which is the site. And, just keep doing what y'all are doing out there. Pay attention, be aware, listen. Yes. You see new things coming up. This podcast is definitely going to hopefully inspire, and do your best.
Yes.
Give it your best shot. You get one shot at this life, you may as well go for it. Go for it and offer your best. Learn everything that you need to know to be able to give yourself the opportunity to contribute in a way that is meaningful. That's would be my advice. It's fun. It's work. It's hard. But it's joy.
Oh, blissful. I must say. I love everything about it. I get to meet people like you.
And vice versa.
Thank you so much, everybody. Saying goodbye from Patrice Rushen, Dennis, and myself. Guys. Thank you, and continue to let's go.
Let's go, guys.
Let's go.
For more information of booking 23DB Productions, visit their website at 23dbproductions.com. Like and follow 23DB Productions at Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter for the latest work.